The night of explosions, Russia and Crimea in flames. Massive blasts and fires rip through Russia and occupied Crimea. Oil refineries, chemical plants and fuel depots are burning from Moscow to the Volga region. One after another, Ukrainian drones strike deep into the enemy's territory, bypassing defenses and turning critical infrastructure into ruins. The so-called impregnable layer is collapsing. Meanwhile, in Crimea, chaos, panic and fire. Explosions rock Simferopol and other cities, hitting fuel tanks and military facilities. Local collaborators confirm the strikes while fuel stations run dry and radar systems go dark. The once proud Fortress Crimea is rapidly becoming a trap for the occupiers. Which targets were hit this time? Why are these facilities crucial to Russia's war machine? And what's next? New strikes, new chaos, or the long-awaited turning point? Let's talk about it. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Maria Farafonova, and here are the latest news. Ukraine's defense forces are actively targeting Russia's rear areas. In Russia, the Stavroland chemical plant in Budenovsk Stavropol Krai came under attack. Eyewitnesses filmed the UAV strikes, noting that the plant was hit. Stavroland is a chemical and petrochemical plant in Budenovsk that is part of the Lukoil group. The facility is one of Russia's main producers of polyethylene and polypropylene. In 2021, the plant ranked third in Russia by sales volume. During the night, drones were also spotted over Russia's Ulyanovsk region. Soon after, explosions were reported at the NS oil refinery. Locals said they heard between 5 and 8 blasts in total. Videos of the aftermath have already surfaced online, showing fireballs and thick plumes of smoke rising from the site. Preliminary reports indicate the AVT-200 unit was hit, and as oil itself processes crude oil, producing gasoline and diesel fractions as well as fuel oil. The plant's capacity is up to 600,000 tons of fuel per year. Notably, there are 3 refineries in the Novospassky district. So far, confirmed effects have been reported at only one of them. The Razan oil refinery was also hit. Explosions and a large-scale fire were recorded on the facility's premises. According to the general staff, this refinery is a strategic asset of Russia's military-industrial complex and plays a role in supplying the occupying armed forces.
The Razan oil refinery is one of the largest in the central part of the Russian Federation and belongs to Rosneft. The plant's capacities allow for processing more than 17 million tons of oil per year and play an important role in supplying fuel to the enemy's military formations and the logistical supply chains of the occupying forces. Disabling part of the refinery's production facilities reduces the Russian army's ability to conduct combat operations.
And now, fire in the Moscow region. Telegram channels reported that the oil depot was burning. Earlier in that day, an air raid alert had been declared for the Russian capital and its outskirts due to the threat of incoming strike drones. Apparently, one of them left behind a fiery greeting as a reminder of its visit. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin reported on Telegram that local air defenses shot down a UAV heading for the Russian capital. He said emergency services are working at the site where debris fell. Later, monitoring channels reported that the drone struck the Serpukhov oil depot in the Moscow region. Footage of the fire has been shared online. The true fire of retribution has ignited in Moscow. Ukrainian drones have caused chaos across Putin's capital and its suburbs, setting the night sky ablaze and shattering the illusion of safety at the very heart of Russia. Explosions, panic, and plumes of smoke are spreading across the region as air raid sirens wail. And this is only the beginning. The storm of precision strikes is far from over. All the details in our next report.
Pickup trucks with machine guns mounted on their roofs along the perimeter of the Kremlin. It's unlikely that Putin and his generals expected to see such a scene in the 4th year of the war. This past weekend, Moscow and the surrounding region came under a massive drone attack. At night, Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports were temporarily closed. By morning, their operations had been restored. In the Kommunaka area, explosions were heard during the attack and smoke was seen rising above the forest. All night, Moscow Mayor Sobyanin wrote in his Telegram channel about drones being shot down. Other Russian public channels also reported on the large-scale drone attack.
The AFU are trying to launch a massive attack on Moscow and the region. Within a couple of hours, 14 drones heading for the capital were destroyed. Explosions in the sky were heard in Domodedovo, Podolsk, Dubna, Ramenskoye, Kommunarka, Troitsk and Kolomna. At Zhukovsky and Domodedovo airports, 5 flights were cancelled and 6 were rescheduled. Restrictions on departures and arrivals have been introduced. In
the Moscow region, a massive fire broke out at the Serpukhov oil depot as a result of drone strikes. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that nearly 200 attack UAVs were shot down overnight.
This is not the first time that Russians themselves have recorded more than 40 drones heading toward Moscow. We're trying to bypass the capital's air defense system, which is now deployed directly there. But we understand that all of this is in place. These are specific retaliatory strikes and probing actions, probing to see how to deliver a more effective combined strike.
Recently, Western media published a map of the air defense systems protecting the Russian capital. But even through such dense protection, Ukrainian drones managed to slip through. Because of this heavy protection of Moscow, other regions and strategic facilities across Russia are suffering.
Analysts note that the systems are constantly being moved around, but the majority are concentrated around Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Putin's residence in Valdai. There simply aren't enough systems to protect oil refineries and other strategic facilities in the regions. This is exactly what the Ukrainian armed forces are taking advantage of. In
the Moscow region, explosions were heard near the airfield where Russia's strategic aviation is based. The Shaykovka Strategic Aviation Air Base and Kaluga Airport in Russia's Kaluga region were also under attack. This is not the first massive drone attack on Moscow and other regions. Even though the Russian Ministry of Defense always underreports the number of drones, almost 200. That's quite a lot, and their number will only continue to grow.
This has a very serious anti-propaganda effect, especially for the Kremlin. Let me remind you that one of the reasons for launching the so-called special military operation was the issue of guaranteeing the security of the Russian Federation itself, as Putin and his inner circle explained it. We are seeing how the war is coming directly to Moscow. And not just to Muscovites. We see that the geography of Ukraine's drone attacks is expanding.
Before the start of the so-called special military operation, drones did not terrorize ordinary Russians, let alone Muscovites. Now, however, air raid alerts throughout the night are becoming a routine occurrence for Moscow. And perhaps now Russians will have questions and complaints for the master of the Kremlin.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
It's not calm in occupied Crimea either. Explosions were heard across several parts of the peninsula, sparking multiple fires. At least one oil depot and most likely a military facility came under attack. In addition, Russians reported a fire in the area of the thermal power plant in Simferopol. Later, a local telegram channel wrote that an oil depot located nearby was burning. The Kremlin-installed governor of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov, officially confirmed an attack by unidentified UAVs. He wrote that in Simferopol, a drone struck a tank containing fuel and lubricants, sparking a fire. Ukraine is steadily preparing Crimea for deoccupation. For Russian settlers and collaborators, life and work in Crimea are becoming unbearable. Diesel fuel has already disappeared from gas stations, and precise Ukrainian strikes on Russian military radar systems are paving the way for further destructions of the occupiers' fuel and military infrastructure. Each successful operation tightens the noose around Russian logistics on the peninsula. What awaits both residents and occupiers in the near future, and how Ukraine's systematic campaign is turning Crimea from a fortress into a trap? Up next.
After a hard, long, and exhausting journey, filled with many challenges and moments that tested their endurance and spirit, Crimea and Sevastopol are now returning to their home harbor, a place that has always symbolized safety, belonging, and the comfort of familiar shores.
And that harbor is Ukraine. Crimea is being cut off from the Russian Federation, and the collapse of the Crimean Bridge is just a matter of time, according to Western publications. There is already a total fuel crisis on the peninsula. Some areas have been left without electricity. There isn't enough air defense even for the most important sites, and those that remain in the chaos are now shooting down their own planes.
We note that as a military base, Crimea is becoming more and more inconvenient for Russia because there is no water.
So, the past few days have marked a new reality of life on the peninsula. The key event was a series of strikes in the area of Vardiska, where after precise hits, a massive explosion broke out. This is the largest oil depot in the area. According to locals, the burning depot in Vardiska could be seen from the suburbs of Simferopol, with the glow visible for many kilometers.
In Vardiska there were strikes not only on the oil depot but also on the military airfield, as well as on the Russian garrison station there.
According to information circulating online, an ammunition depot on the garrison's territory was also hit. In addition, the oil depot near Feodosia has also partially ceased operations. Due to several attacks just this month, 11 fuel tanks have been completely destroyed, as confirmed by satellite images.
Why is the story about the Feodosia oil depot so important? It's not just that it burned down on its own, it burned down with the fuel that was stored in those tanks. And that will be very difficult to restore. It's unclear what exactly was there. Diesel fuel or gasoline. But if it was gasoline, which is most likely, it means that the crisis this week in occupied Crimea will be much worse than it was the week before. So we wait.
At the same time, each such strike is notable for the fact that it's almost impossible to extinguish the fire. Experts say the burning fuel spreads across the facility, igniting neighboring tanks, and so the fire can go on for days.
The landscapes of Feodosia adorn almost the entire eastern part of Crimea. They say the flames can be seen from 30 and in some places even 50 kilometers away. Everything, it is said, is burning to the ground. The facility needs to be shut down. This is a recommendation for the occupying Crimean authorities, who have also confirmed that there will be no gasoline.
There will be no diesel either, local authorities add. Local activists report that since the beginning of the week, diesel fuel has also disappeared in Crimea. Under these circumstances, the promise of the head of the occupying Crimean administration, Sergei Aksyonov, to stabilize the fuel supply situation is simply impossible to fulfill, added Z propagandist Alexander Sergeyev. At the same time, the authorities are desperately trying to conceal the real picture of what is happening in Crimea. Thus, just over the past weekend, police officers drew up at least 4 administrative reports against residents of the peninsula for posts on social media. People in particular were outraged by the lack of fuel. Interestingly, Russians themselves are partly helping the Ukrainian armed forces to identify targets in Crimea. Experts have analyzed that now these targets can be found simply by opening maps on the internet.
Remember when Yandex Maps started blurring all sorts of strategic sites? I said that now it's absolutely clear where exactly to strike. Well, my friends from Inform Napalm noticed that the Special Operations Forces did exactly that. The territory of the oil depot in Gvardeskoye was blurred on Yandex, but for some reason that didn't help against the strikes. Mystical. Once again, thanks to all the Russian decisions that help increase the effectiveness of Ukrainian strikes, blurring military sites on Yandex Maps is definitely one of them.
Another decision that has contributed to the irregular strikes in Crimea is the work of the defense forces targeting Russian air defense sites on the peninsula. For example, the day before, the main intelligence directorate managed to strike the occupiers' newest radar system. We're talking about the Valday complex, which was developed to detect small drones.
The security service of Ukraine continues to systematically reduce the enemy's military, logistical and economic capabilities to do anything, both in occupied Crimea and in other occupied territories, and even on Russian territory itself. But Crimea suffers the most because the air defense system there was deliberately destroyed, their ability to defend themselves was reduced, and now we are working as if inside the body.
By the way, so that the occupiers in Crimea don't get the impression that everything will still work out, along with oil depots and military equipment, the Ukrainian armed forces also didn't forget about the equipment that supplies electricity. Russian bases. In several regions of the peninsula, Ukrainian defenders organized blackouts.
At night in Crimea, several electrical substations were put out of commission. And in particular, the main power substation in Jankoy, or Jankong, as we used to call it in Crimea. So now rolling blackouts are being introduced. And here Putin is being shown in very concrete terms, yet again, that if he continues to strike Ukraine's energy infrastructure, the occupiers in Crimea will be left without electricity and fuel.
And the cherry on top? During one of the latest attacks, the Russian air defense crews got so nervous that they started firing at everything in sight. As a result, one less Russian fighter jet worth about $50 million.
During a nighttime attack by Ukrainian drones, Russian forces shot down their own Su-30SM aircraft. This happened right in the area of the Gvardeskoye airfield.
At the same time, there's no good news for the occupiers when it comes to air defense. Analysts note that recently there have been more strikes on Russian territory itself, prompting a decision to partially redeploy air defense systems from Crimea back to Russia for protection.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video, and stay informed about the main headlines. More to come?